And that's the kind of world we've created for our kids and for ourselves. Lots of fear. So, the logic of intellect, how we describe intellect, is very exclusive. We want to exclude down to one basic truth. You'd better pass that math placement test, or else. And then we build all of these beliefs and expectations on top of that one truth. Well, if you pass it, the world's going to be wonderful. If you don't, it's going to be really bad. The problem is this: that may work in the intellectual world. You know, there are some basic things in the material world and in the scientific world that are absolutely irrefutable. Gravity. Last time I checked, things go down. Unless they have helium in them. Which this doesn't have. But in the emotional world, because the emotional world has to deal much more with our spirit. That intangible energy that lives inside of us, and when somebody dies, it goes away. Now we know that electricity and energy is never destroyed. It just changes. So defining, I mean, we know what electricity is, but it's still kind of a mystery. And we know there's electricity in our nervous systems because that's what makes us function. So I want you to think of this emotional side in terms of your spirit, the part of you that makes you distinctive in terms of, well, let's see here, spirit. Okay, that can include your passions. And I'm not just talking about sexual passions. I'm talking about, you know, whether you think Audi is the neatest car on the road, or no, it's a BMW, or well, no, I still love my Fords and my Chevys, you know. But the bottom line is we all have passions about life, the things that just really get our energy going, get our spirit going. And the logic of these things is inclusive. It's not exclusive like the academic stuff over here, like the scientific stuff. It's inclusive. We have an experience in life, and multiple emotions come at us that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. We go to weddings, and we say, it's bittersweet, because it's the end of one life and the beginning of a new life. Same thing with funerals, same thing with births, same thing with falling in love, same thing with falling out of love. That one's usually a little harder to take, but it's more like a cement bag. A bag of cement dropping on your leg as opposed to, but this emotional stuff is this mixture of things that's not logical. And one of the biggest problems with our era, our times, is we've been taught if something isn't logical, it's not real. If we can't explain it with intellectual logic, then it doesn't exist. Well, explain that one in terms of love and fear. Why do you love somebody? Why are you afraid of something? Sometimes the fears are logical. Love, I don't think is ever logical. You can turn on the radio in most places in the world, and there'll be songs about love and how illogical it is, with all of the passion that goes along with it. And on one hand, we love love, and on the other hand, it's a real pain. Anyway, this is life. Now, what does all this have to do with therapy? Lots of people come from situations that often they've created where they really want their life to work out on the intellectual side. They want to be able to plan things, they want to be able to use their thinking, their ideas, and their plans so that they can be happy. Isn't that what we all want? Is to be happy? And of course, part of what we're really taught that, well, material wealth always equals happiness. Well, I was lucky. I grew up around a lot of rich people, so I know that one's not true. Ann Landers said it best, by the way, in her book in the mid-60s, Since You Asked Me. Money may not buy happiness, but it does make misery much more comfortable. And that's about all I'll say for material wealth. So back to emotions and intellect. We all think that if we do all the right stuff, if we pass that math placement test and we get into the right college and we graduate with it and we get a really great job, and then we're going to be happy. And for a lot of people, that is happiness. But not everybody. And people come into my office because usually they've done all this stuff and they're miserable. And they're like, well, I've done everything I'm supposed to, and I'm miserable. Or sometimes they're just miserable even if they haven't done all this stuff. Sometimes they weren't able to do all this stuff, so now they blame themselves because they're miserable because, well, if I had just been a better person or a smarter person or a more of a suck-up or less of a suck, I don't know. I mean, the list goes on forever. But this self-blaming because you do all the stuff you're supposed to do and you're still miserable, this is a very common theme in our society. Very common theme. And usually it's because the person has spent so much time focusing on this that they've ignored this, or sometimes they didn't even know this was here, so that they could balance the two out. Because we don't send kids to school, even for a month, to learn how their emotions function. We don't tell people it's okay to have feelings, even if they're kind of dark and yucky. You know, like sometimes my parent makes me so angry I wish they'd never come home from work. We've all had that one a few times. Or we run away from home, or both. Okay? Or I had this really bad sense of intuition that something awful was going to happen to someone I love. And then it did, so it must have been my fault. Spirit has been completely erased and replaced with religion. And I don't mean teach you how to love yourself religion. I mean teach you how to hate everybody else that's not like you religion. And that's a whole other conversation that we will do in another chapter of this. But we have forgotten our spirit and focused on becoming obedient, religious, again, making plans, doing all the right stuff, you know, and then we wonder why we feel so empty inside. And again, sometimes we have passions that are very different from what our family, our loved ones, our community, our culture says that we should enjoy. A personal anecdote on this one. I grew up in the rural South, and there are certain things that Southerners just do not engage in. We're not supposed to like things like that. That's what Yankees like. Well, then I moved away to Miami, and I got to know some Yankees, and they were really loving, wonderful people. And it's like, well, but I like this stuff too. And of course, the ultimate is, I grew up in a culture where if you don't eat grits for breakfast, you're like seriously a traitor to your own kind. Well, I never really liked grits. I liked hash browns, but hash browns are what Yankees eat. So I had this terrible passion that was a disgrace to my family, my culture, my blood, my kin, my type. You know what? I got over it, and if they need to get over it too, and most of them have, but this is a point about where we will have a passion for something that's very outside of the box of what we've been taught over here is acceptable. So these are the kinds of conflicts that people come into therapy with, and that I help them sort out. And we're going to talk some about how I help them sort it out in the next video. So I hope